You need to spend a lot of money. I think it's absolutely awesome. The list can go on and on and on. There is no easier way to create a development environment. Maybe I will call it browser-based development. Let's talk about your development environment. You need a laptop or maybe a desktop computer. It needs to have 32 gigs of RAM or maybe even more, infinite amount of CPU, SSD drive. You need a lot of money. You need to spend a lot of money to buy a really, really, really good laptop. And then you need to set up all the compilers and testing tools and terminal and IDEs and whatever you need to effectively work in a project. And then comes another project, or maybe you want to contribute to an open source project that happens to be, let's say, .NET instead of Java, maybe it's Golang, and then you need to repeat many of the things, install additional tools, additional compilers, additional environment. And now, let's not forget about virtual machines. You might need virtual machines, and to create those environments where you're going to run one application and then another set of virtual machines for another. Maybe you're using Docker, and then you need Docker desktop, and you need containers, and it needs to run Kubernetes as well. And the list can go on and on and on. Basically, setting up a development environment is an ongoing struggle that is time-consuming and expensive. Now, what if I would tell you that you can be just as productive, just as efficient with the cheapest laptop and without installing any of those tools? Realistically, maybe, just maybe, we can leverage cloud to get everything we need, and maybe the only thing we have to have installed is a browser. Maybe I will call it browser-based development. We'll see. We're going to explore, in this episode, we're going to explore Gitpod as a potential solution to greatly simplify our development environment. So let's go. Actually, before we go, subscribe. It is very important that you subscribe to this channel. Then you get notifications when I do another cool episode. And without further ado, let's explore creating development environment for any project in the world based on Gitpod. We are going to explore Gitpod in 20 minutes or less. I already did a couple of things in advance, just not to bore you too much with easy stuff. Actually, everything is going to be easy. But I registered in Gitpod. So I will skip that step. I'm sure that you know how to register. Just go to gitpod.io and you'll see it's easy. And I installed a Chrome extension, the Chrome extension, Gitpod extension for Chrome, because that's my favorite browser. I'm not sure whether there is extension for other browsers. If not, I will show you later near the end of this video how to do the same thing without extension. But for now, I'm using Chrome extension. And that's about it. And the third thing, I also told Gitpod how to connect to my GitHub account so that it can do whatever it needs to do with repositories. Outside of that, that's it. Register to Gitpod, connect with my GitHub account, and install Chrome, browser Chrome extension. So now with that finished, let's see how we can use it. I could theoretically now go to any Git repository and use Gitpod to create whatever I need to work in that repository. And I will do that with a simple demo application that I created earlier. It is located in GitHub vFarsec gitpod-demo. So please go to github.com/vFarsec/gitpod-demo. You will find the link to the repository in the description of this video. Go there, and then, since we are going to make some changes to the source code, you cannot use my repo. Please fork it. Fork the repository. Over here, there we are, is a fork button. Click it. Don't be afraid, and choose into which of your GitHub users you want to fork. You might have only one. I have many. Anyways, I'm going to fork it as well, and then it will take like 5 seconds until repository is forked and we will be able to use it. Now, all we need, theoretically at least, actually in practice as well, more or less, to work with a project that is in a Git repository, in this case GitHub, it could be GitLab, is to click this button, Gitpod, right? This will give us everything we need. And how did I get this button? And if you don't see that button, that's because you didn't install Chrome extension. Chrome extension gives you that button. If you don't use Chrome, that's okay. I will tell you later how. No, I will tell you right now. What you can do is prefix the address at the top with gitpod.io and /sharp, and then the rest of the address of the repository you want to work with. I will show you that later. For now, let's assume that you have a button that you're using Chrome, and all you have to do is click this button. I will click it. And now I need to let Gitpod work for a while. So now it's Gitpod trying to create everything I need. And you will see later how it knows what it is that I need. But what you can see probably from the output is that it is using containers. Docker containers or some other containers, doesn't matter, they're all compatible. Anyway, it is using containers to create the environment with all the tools, all the configurations, and everything we might ever need. Now it built the container, it's finished, and that's happening only once. It will cache it, next time it will be much faster. And now that it built container image, it is creating the environment somewhere in cloud, over there, cloud. And it will take maybe 10 more seconds, something like that, until I have whatever I need to work with this repository. And as I said before, it could be any repository. Let me make this bigger, and this is what we got, right? We have, actually what you see in front of you is called Theia. Now, if you're confused, if you're using Visual Studio Code, Theia is almost the same as Visual Studio Code. It shares most of the same code. The major difference is that it works well in a browser, it works well in cloud, and it is under Eclipse Foundation, so it is more, let's say, independently managed. So what we have here, okay, a bit bigger, is files on the left side of my project. There we are. We have one of those files, in this case README, opened here, and then we have a terminal that we can use to type any commands at the bottom. And finally, at the right side, in my case, I have preview of my application. So whatever I'm working, whichever changes I make to this application, I will see it on the right side, over here, above my head and behind me, in this case. So how is this happening? How did Gitpod know what to do? Let me actually show you that. There are two magical files. They're very easy. .gitpod.yaml and .gitpod.docker file. So let me close the README here. You will see that I'm now using this as my development environment to show you stuff. So if I open .gitpod.yaml, these are the instructions that I set up in advance. If later on I will show you the wizard how you can do this easily yourself. So it is saying, hey, the image with all the tools we need is in this file. I will show you that file later. And whenever the environment is initialized for the first time, execute make init. This is a make file. In this case, it can be any command, right? And this application actually is a Hugo-based application. It is a bit silly, small. So it's just initializing some themes, Git submodules for this application. Nothing really important. I set up here to run a command. Every time I create this environment, I'm running a command Hugo server and then passing some URL. So I'm running Hugo server on specific URL, and that URL is based on port 1313 of whatever is the auto-generated address of this Gitpod workspace. and I'm not appending the, doesn't matter. This is Hugo specific. What matters is that I'm in control, what should be executed when I want to create a development environment for this specific project. And you can see here in the bottom in the terminal that my Hugo server is running, and that's how I see the application on the right side. And not only that it is running, but it will auto-compile whenever I change something in this project. And I will see the results of what I'm doing. And I have some other terminal. This is the terminal where I can type whichever commands I need and so on and so forth. Now let's imagine that I'm simulating. I cannot say that I'm really doing development. I'm going to simulate development and we're going to see what we're going to get. So I'm going to make this terminal slightly smaller and I'm going to open config toml. Don't worry what that is. If you haven't worked with Hugo, that's okay. I'm just simulating development. I'm going to change the title of this application, of this web page actually. And here, if I go to params banner and change the title, what should I do? This is, remember, this is simulation of development, something else. And I'm going to click save, command in this case S. And in the background, it recompiled my application. And if I refresh this preview here, we can see that I can see results of my changes right away here. Everything happening in the browser. And now I can continue writing code. This wasn't really writing code, but imagine that I'm spending a couple of hours working on some feature, validating it, running tests, seeing the preview of my application, whatever the application is. And then when I'm finished, what I would normally do is push changes to Git. And from there on, like git add, and I'm using now terminal here. And I can open a new terminal if you need more, like new terminal. Here we go. And I can do git commit -m something, and I can push changes back to the GitHub. And I can execute any command as long as the tool exists, right? And how do I know whether the tool exists? And this is gitpod.docker file. So Gitpod comes already with, is based on this image workspace pool, which comes with a ton of tools that I need, like there is Git, there is JQ, there is Docker, and so on and so forth. Now, if you need any additional tools, like in this case, I needed, apart from the common tools, I needed Hugo itself. So I created my own gitpod.docker file, which extends the default image, and it executes brew to install Hugo. So I extended Gitpod default image to add the tools that I need that were missing, in this case Hugo, and I can add any tool I want. So any tool I want through .gitpod.docker file, and any commands that I want to run as a result of creating a workspace is in .gitpod.yaml. And that's how easy it is. And I will show you now what to do. Soon I will show you what to do with repositories that do not have those files. You will see that soon. But for now, I have a full development environment. You forked my repository and you can work with this application as well without having anything, absolutely anything installed on your laptop, except, of course, browser. And now, let's change a bit the way how we do things. Let's imagine that you don't have Chrome extension and that you want to do the same thing. And let's imagine that you want to do it with a repository that doesn't have, is not already pre-configured to use Gitpod, right? Something from somebody who never thought that Gitpod is a good idea. So I'm going to open a new repository. Now, this is a repository that I do not control. This is from a friend of mine, Stefan Prodan. He's from VWorks, and the repository is podinfo. And you can see in this repository, it has a bunch of stuff, but it doesn't have .gitpod anything. So this is a repository that never used Gitpod. Now I have this extension button from the extension here, but I already said that I will imagine that you don't have Chrome extension. If you do, just click this button here, this button over here. If you don't, go to the address of any repository and prefix it with gitpod.io, sharp sign. And if I prefix that address like that, which is here, just adding gitpod.io / sharp sign and click the enter key, I will get yet another workspace. Now this is Gitpod workspace being created for a repository that is not configured to use Gitpod at all. I can guarantee you, Stefan probably doesn't even know about the existence of Gitpod. And here we have things happening already. It figured a couple of things. Now, the important part, and I need to remove myself for you to see this, is that Gitpod asks, hey, would you like to use some guidance? Yes, I want to set up this project to use Gitpod. So now I can just follow the wizard. Say, Gitpod is asking me, hey, would you like to create Gitpod YAML? Yes, I would. And it is creating it. And would you like to change the base image? Do you want to, and by the way, you can see here, Gitpod YAML was created. Let me make files disappear. We don't need them, right? So it created a file, Gitpod YAML, that already figured out that this repository is most likely using Go. So it created the initial task that will build the application and execute tests and then run the application. Brilliant. So it figured out what needs to be done. And then it says, would you like to update Docker configuration? Yes, I would like to do that as well. I can choose between a couple of options. I'm going to use the default one. And yes, I want to generate .gitpod.docker file. And the Docker file is generated. We can open the files and see here, where is it? Docker file is generated, and we can extend it if we need any additional tools that are not available there by default. Let's continue with the instructions. Do we want to update the README? Yes, I want to do everything you tell me. So what it did here is that it added Gitpod ready to code. It added the button to the README as well, just in case you don't have a Chrome extension that will redirect you to Gitpod. And finally, we can push the changes we just did to a branch and start a new workspace with those changes applied. So this was a very quick wizard. Just yes, 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 next, 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 next. And that's about it. I will skip creating a pull request. I don't want to bother Stefan with the pull request to his demo application with Gitpod. But basically follow the wizard and you get everything you need for a repo. Any repo, basically. Almost any repo in the world. There is probably some strange repositories. But generally, that's all there. So that's about it. Now, the only thing left... Yeah, let's go here to Gitpod home screen. Now here you can see that the workspaces that I have so far, and those are the workspaces of the two repositories that we explored. We can open any of them to go back, like the initial one. And here we are. I'm back into the workspace of the first application. I can go back home. I can stop any of those. I can start them. If I stop it, it stopped. And then it will take a couple of seconds. Then I can reopen it again, start it again, and so on and so forth. So we're in control. We can delete the workspaces. There is no real need to delete them yourself because after a couple of minutes, workspaces are shut down anyway. I think it's 30 minutes or something like that. Not sure what is the frequency, but anyway, it will keep it clean. Don't be afraid if Gitpod shuts down your workspace after some amount of time of inactivity. That's okay for a simple reason because everything can be recreated. And here we are, one is stopped and I can start it again. So it is keeping it clean, it is keeping it resource efficient and so on and so forth. So that's about it. There is I cannot imagine, I can always imagine stuff. But right now, based on my experience, there is no easier way to create a development environment than this. And on top of that, it saves you time from installing all the tools and what's or not, and CLIs and scripts and virtual machines and what's or not on your laptop. So, Gitpod. Can it replace your development environment on your laptop? I would say yes. Theia is just as good as Visual Studio Code. It is almost indistinguishable from Visual Studio Code. Running it in browser or running it on your laptop is almost the same, but there are additional benefits. You can have different setups for different projects. You can work on a project you never worked before and be ready like this. Now, I will not lie, sometimes you need to spend maybe a couple of minutes. Maybe it's not a couple of seconds, but a couple of minutes, maybe even 10, 15 minutes to set up a completely new project from scratch. Still, it is completely isolated. It runs somewhere else. It doesn't require a powerful laptop. You get everything you need with a click of a button and maybe changing a few lines in few files. I think it's absolutely awesome. It is one of the coolest projects I used in a while. And it is a good showcase of how containers themselves are fostering innovation and providing ideas or facilitating the ideas that we either didn't have before or that were not so easy to implement in the past. Additional thing, and this is important for all of you who cannot use cloud, is that it can be self-hosted. You can run it as we did in this demo, or you can install it in your cluster and then allow all the people working with you to benefit from it. There is one more important thing. Should I do all the upcoming demos using Gitpod? Sounds like a great idea because it means that you will be able to follow along what I do without installing additional tools, CLIs, configurations, whatsoever, just by clicking Gitpod. I think it's actually excellent. I will do that. I will use Gitpod exclusively from now on, either until I figure out that maybe it's not as good, which I don't think will happen, or it will be the go-to tool for everything I do in the future. Yeah, it will be an experiment. I will be using from now on exclusively Gitpod. And then maybe we can do another video half a year from now. Few additional important questions or comments. First of all, from now on, let's start sending me information about what you would like to see next. Which is the tool, the process? What would you like me to evaluate next and give you honest opinion and maybe some kind of tutorial? In the meantime, while you're trying to figure out what I should do next and send it in a comment of any of the videos or Twitter, please subscribe and hit the like button if you like this video. If you want to support the channel, there are books and courses. Don't forget to listen to the DevOps Paradox podcast. And that's about it. We're finished. Have a good day or night whenever you're watching. Cheers.